Good morning, everybody. It is April 14th, somehow already. I know I'm always incredulous about the time, but frankly, I am. So there you go. Somehow April 14th, April showers, all that stuff. Anybody who's up in Canada, it's been a hell of a winter, but we're almost there. I haven't done one of these in a while, and I apologize because there's lots of things that are happening. And again, for those of you who don't regularly watch this, because we've got a lot of new subscribers, this is sort of my addendum to the podcast that we do, which is called Recruiting EQ. I'm Rick, and I'm SVP of BD at Raymond George. A few things that I wanted to point out that are awesome. So here's where I guess I discuss a little bit more what's happening in rec to rec in the recruiting market. So I will say that there's a lot of exciting things that have been happening in the past month or so in terms of recruitment. Obviously, that we know from the news, the stock market's been up and down. Politically, there's a lot of unrest all over the place. But at least if we're just looking at the job market, there's been some very promising upswing in the hiring of both salespeople as well as full desk recruiters, and in some cases, even 180 recruiters in agency in various hubs in the US, which of course would be the predictable ones. New York, greater metropolitan area. Dallas, Texas is another spot where we're seeing a lot of upswing. Austin is going to start swinging apparently as well. And, again, this is sort of what we see is sort of a macro view of the market because we are rec to recs. We service recruiting agencies and they respond to what they're seeing in their clients in the market, right? So if people are hiring now, again, in primarily finance, but we're starting to see some hiring in tech again too. IT's been along the quiet side since a lot of the layoffs that happened in 23 and 24. So definitely an upswing. New York, Texas, especially Dallas, where we've seen it's just heating right up, right? So again, if you are in either of those markets and you would like to have a look at what's going on out there and see, is the grass greener on the other side? Talking to me, one of my team, or a rec to rec in general is a good way of figuring that out. And I would suggest doing it before you're 100% ready to look, so that this way you're ahead of the curve, right? Once everybody's looking, then it's difficult. It's a free for all at that point, and employers have the pick of the litter of who to hire. So it's a little harder to get people's attention, to get maybe what you wanted, etc. And let's touch on that for a second. The grass being greener, right? Is the grass greener? Usually, probably, but for what? It's all about the right person, the right place, the right time. You know what I mean? So understanding what's out there and reflecting on it in your day-to-day can sometimes shift what you think you're looking for. Simply working at an agency or a couple of agencies, going forward saying, you know what, this is what I would change about these agencies. Thus, this is what I'm looking for, and I don't want to hear anything else from anybody else. You're probably missing out. You're probably missing out on options. You're probably missing out on things you didn't even realize were there or didn't realize you wanted. So my recommendation, for what it's worth, would be to get into just an honest conversation with people about what's out there, what you do and don't like, and ask a lot of questions. Coming in saying, I only want to talk about this, and I don't think it's worth my time to have a conversation about anything else. You're the only one who's losing out there. If someone's willing to take the time on spec to just have a chat with you about what options are out there, and maybe 3-4 chats and have a coffee chat about it, you're the one who wins out, right? So I highly recommend doing it. You have nothing to lose from trying to get that information, and now is probably a spectacular time to do that. Particularly, like I say, Dallas and New York, I personally have tons of really cool, interesting jobs and a couple more on the way. Some of these are highly entrepreneurial, which include things like there's not a lot of remote jobs. I'm just saying that, but there are a couple where remote is an option. Most are hybrid, but entrepreneurial type things, running a P&L, getting equity in the company. So if you're looking for that next step, now is a really good time to start having those conversations. I've linked to our most recent episode of Recruiting EQ, the podcast. Again, thanks to everybody who listens, who comments, who participates in every single way, shape, and form. We went, distributed as an actual podcast in the month of March. We're mid-April, and I just saw from our distributor this morning that we hit 10 countries. So people are listening in 10 different countries, which is great. Not surprisingly, the number one audience for us is the United States, because again, that's where a lot of the focus is of our actual work. But surprised to see people listening in Germany and Spain and Japan and all kinds of other places. So thank you for that. Obviously, Canada is up there too, for sure. So yes, thank you for that. That was a lovely milestone already so quickly. There's a link to follow us on your favorite podcast network, Spotify, you name it, right in this video. So feel free to check it out and see if there's anything useful. Particularly our last episode, I'm super excited about because we had CEO and co-founder David Paffenholz of Juicebox, which is a tool that we have been using at Raymond George. We obviously review a lot of tools as being recruiters who recruits recruiters. We kind of have to know what's going on there. And shout out to my colleague Sergey for pointing it out to us, for suggesting that we do a trial and then adopting it. So I feel like we're pretty early adopters on the Juicebox. It's an AI tool that is a language-based model. So again, you can sort of search for profiles as you would on LinkedIn, Recruiter or Sales Navigator or other tools of that nature, or an ATS, but you can search and prompt it kind of like you would Chat GPT or nowadays Google or what have you, and get more detailed results. There's more filters. There's a huge database of profiles, so you're not limited to just your first, second, and third level connections. So there's a lot of benefits to checking that out. Cost effective as well. I can provide a link to check that out as well. Highly recommend. But the most interesting thing about the timing here was that Juicebox has just released AI agents. And this has obviously got the sort of staffing and recruiting world ablaze. Not just Juicebox, of course, but they are one of the first to sort of commercially just make these available. And an AI agent is an AI bot that you train that goes out and sources for you. There's different levels of task that you can give to these different agents. Juicebox does not have one with an avatar that looks like a person, right, and talks to you and does a whole phone screen, but some do. So it's a very interesting conversation. I was very happy to get his thoughts. I invite you to have a listen. It really dives into the AI agent functionality and where he sees them work into workflow and all this kind of stuff toward the end of the talk. But again, it's an hour long. If you only have a little bit, maybe watch the last 20 minutes or so. But we got into a debate a little bit during the episode. And I think this is a healthy debate that's happening everywhere, which is, will AI agents replace human beings? And, my personal stance on this is that the way that most staffing agencies and TA departments run their just like screening process, I think a lot of that can be offloaded to AI. I think AI can do more in less time and be more efficient. Do I think I think that's actually just very revealing about some limitations that are in the process. I think it's a failing on behalf of staffing and recruiting that AI can take it over. And the reason I say that is because the difference between an AI bot and a human being is going to be that a second human being, in not just the candidate, but like a recruiter being human, also has emotions, right? Also is bringing something to the table. Most decisions, as you can see from researching anything on cognitive science out there, are made in the emotion centers of the brain, right? So facts and cerebral sort of knowledge in the conscious mind plays a part, but without emotions, the emotional quotient is what makes people make decisions. This is a very big life decision, changing your career, right? So in my opinion, it's a bit of a one-sided conversation when you have an AI bot. And I think that there's an opportunity here for us to, as those who work in staffing and recruiting, discuss, hey, maybe this is putting highlighter on a failing here. Why are we not encouraging, hiring for, and training recruiters to be able to hone the skill of managing the situation emotionally? I did a series myself on using DBT skills, dialectical behavior therapy skills, in training. They use them in elementary schools now. These are skills that were used to train therapists who are dealing with people with borderline personality disorder or crisis management. But I think regardless of the type of tools, the conversation to me is, hey, there's a value in a person being able to have emotions, bring an emotional intelligence to the surface, and help to match someone to a role and a life change that's actually going to also take into consideration the human qualities of that person and not just the on-paper career qualities. This is something that I myself have had the luxury of being able to have been encouraged to do in recruitment. I think it can be very powerful. I think it can be really life-changing for the right person. It also includes being, bold enough to walk away and not make your commission when you don't feel that you have the right position for somebody. So my point is it's a whole different approach than you see out there if we were to actually train and hire for people who are better at the EQ quotient. Of course, I'm biased. The whole podcast is called Recruiting EQ. But anyway, have a listen. I would love your thoughts on this. I think this is an ongoing debate out there. My colleague Sergey in the episode, you'll see, thinks that for most recruiter functions, AI will probably do a better job. And again, I don't disagree, but have a look at the debate. I would love your opinion, and have a great week out there. Hope to see you on Recruiting EQ on Wednesdays. We're off this Wednesday, by the way, but starting back next Wednesday. Hope to see you there.